Glad you could join us on this special edition of EdTech Mondays Africa. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, and we are so excited to be back in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, and we're here to find out more about how Nigeria is investing in digital infrastructure, expanding the digital infrastructure network across the country from the current 35,000 to 90,000 kilometers by the year 2027. This ambitious initiative aims to bridge the digital divide, enhance internet accessibility, and create more learning opportunities for students nationwide, laying the foundation for an inclusive digital learning ecosystem. But how will this massive infrastructure project shape the future of education, and how will improved infrastructure drive the sustainability of digital learning solutions? Innovate, one of the tech hubs in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, is creating solutions that solve Nigeria's technological challenges from a social perspective and also through different levels of technology, from 3D printing to laser technology and many other solutions. These are locally made solutions to solve Nigeria's local problems. But just like we have seen with all other countries around the continent, digital infrastructure is very critical in supporting hubs just like Innovate in Nigeria. So we're here to find out what kind of solutions they have, but also much more on how exactly digital infrastructure can support the success of the hub.
Innovate Hub is a leading innovation, technology, and ventures creation hub that helps to foster entrepreneurship, research commercialization, and technology development amongst entrepreneurs, startups, researchers, towards ensuring that we build an ecosystem that nurtures innovative ideas being developed.
How is digital infrastructure relevant to the work that you're doing here at Innovate?
It holds a lot of what we do here in terms of access to internet, cloud computing softwares. We have a lot of state-of-the-art equipment here that even allows us to do remote learning. And also, the way our programs are structured is one that does a mix of physical interactions with our beneficiaries of our various programs and also remote interactions with them. So we are able to use digital tools and digital skills to accelerate how we translate and transfer knowledge to our beneficiaries who span across entrepreneurs, researchers, and a host of them. For example, many times while our technical team here are building some hardware components for the researchers, they can't be here fully. So there needs to be that virtual interactions that they are taking along with the process of developing their innovative ideas and solutions.
From your perspective, how best do you think that the government can support hubs like yourselves to improve the infrastructure digitally, to support your innovators, to also go ahead and invent without having the disruption of low quality digital infrastructure?
The government role majorly is to create the enabling environment and the infrastructures that is needed. For example, high quality internet, speed connectivity, it's very crucial to the heart of what we do here. And imagine a situation whereby that is being affected. Also electricity and tools and resources. So basically the government can support more in the aspect of ensuring that ecosystem that is needed for innovation and hardware and software development thrives.
What would you want to see done right so that it's able to boost the work that you're doing at Innovate from an innovator's perspective, but also from a hub's perspective?
Access to local resources, right? Sometimes the way at which innovators have access to many of these resources is actually challenging. Another aspect is that we need the government to be more intentional about having more models like Innovate Hub, for example, spread across various parts of Nigeria. It's one thing to want to innovate and develop an idea, but it's another thing for you to have the ecosystem to do that, right? So while innovation hubs like Innovate Hub go about all this capacity building sessions with them, we actually also need the government to support in the aspect of making it enabling, number one, these tools and the resources, subsidizing it and making it affordable for them. Also access without the bottlenecks of, getting access to the resources that are key. What are those measures that are put in place? So the government has a role to play in putting those things in better perspective for the innovators to be able to leverage.
Here at Innovate Hub, we see firsthand how an efficient digital infrastructure setup fuels groundbreaking ideas, shaping the next generation of EdTech solutions. But while visionaries and startups are building the future, policy and investment must pave the way for sustainable growth. And that's where government intervention is very critical. The role of any government around the world is to create an enabling environment for the private sector and its citizens to thrive. In Nigeria, the Minister of Communications, Innovation and the Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, has set out this ambitious plan to expand fiber optic from the current 30,000 kilometers to 90,000 kilometers by the year 2027. Well, to understand more about this initiative, we speak to the man himself, who is currently at Innovate Hub in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, on a tour of the different innovations at the hub. Honorable Minister, what do you think about the innovations at Innovate?
It's not just the innovation. I think Innovate in itself is actually quite innovative. When you think of the state of the startup ecosystem in Nigeria, we're quite strong on the soft side, which is why you see a lot of startups in the fintech space, EdTech, solutions where they're largely based on software. And the facility in itself is quite unique.
Last year, we hosted the Mastercard Foundation EdTech Conference of 2024. And, the theme was pretty much around education technology for resilient and inclusive learning in Africa. Out of those conversations came 10 recommendations. And one of the recommendations is underwriting digital infrastructure for creative use of resources, which brings us to a conversation around Nigeria. Nigeria has prioritized a number of fiber optic expansion initiatives. I think the last I checked, it was at 35,000, but your ambitious goal is to move that to 90,000. Do you want to walk us through where we're at, the progress that has been made since, and where are we going from here?
I think what we've come to realize on the African continent is the power of connectivity, the power of digital technologies. We've seen it in so many aspects of our lives. We've seen it transform society for good. But I think for a long time, we've not been aggressive enough about accelerating the investment in the infrastructure that actually drives our ability to be able to use digital technologies for good on the continent. I think for a long time, people say Africa is mobile first, which is fantastic, which sounds good. But for the future that we're dreaming of, we need to go beyond that. So for us in Nigeria, recognizing that the digital economy contributes anywhere between 16 to 18% of our economy, and we see the potential of it doing much more. We are extremely aggressive about plugging the gap for infrastructure, which is why when we came in, there are so many things I could be doing. I could be building centers like this all over Nigeria coming from the startup ecosystem. But we realize that if connectivity in itself is not addressed, we will limit a lot of the innovations that are coming from spaces like this. If someone builds something that is really good in agriculture, but the farmer doesn't have connectivity and you have a connected technology being built, it's not going to scale. So what we've been able to achieve is to lay out the foundation. The Executive Council approved the project that the country should invest $2 billion. But now we've been able to secure commitment from the World Bank to invest up to $500 million into that project. Then we have a number of private companies who wants to invest as well. AFDB is also committing about $200 million and Islamic Development Bank as well. The progress we've made is also to analyze the previous infrastructure, what we've done with them, and what do we think it's not being done appropriately. Because it's one thing to invest in 90,000 kilometers, it's another thing to actually get people to have access to it and use it. So we've now started something that is called a Broadband Alliance, which is looking to drive consumption where we see non-consumption. So government is de-risking for private companies to come provide connectivity, access to internet for students in university at a very ridiculous price that nearly everyone can afford. But we've also secured additional approval to also deploy 7,000 telecommunications towers because Nigeria still have close to 30 million people that are not connected to any form of telecommunication services at all. So that's also something we're adding to our current plan to ensure that by 2027, nearly all Nigerians can be connected.
What are the possibilities that education is being prioritized in this connectivity strategy, that we are going to see more learning institutions getting better connectivity to support the content that is being built by the different entrepreneurs?
We understand that knowledge in itself is now ubiquitous, right? With the internet, with artificial intelligence, there's literally nothing you want to know that you don't have access to. But the first thing is the access in itself, which is why for everything we do, we take into consideration consumption. I said non-consumption earlier. We look at consumption centers, points where connectivity can actually be used. And one of the places that we prioritize are schools. The example I gave that we're taking internet to schools, the towers that we're building, we're also turning them into a community center, because not only will the towers be there for telecommunication services, they will also become a center that provides internet access for the local community. But that center, we're placing it either within a school or close to a school. So the school in itself becomes the nexus point where people come to enjoy and connect to internet. And by so doing, we can ensure that the school has direct access to connectivity, and perhaps in some cases for free.
What's the role of public-private partnerships in helping you achieve your mandate, and how far are we on that?
I think we've actually learned that government on its own can't do this. Government is not structured to run, technologies or platforms or infrastructure of that sort sustainably, because these are infrastructure that you don't just invest in them once and they're there forever. They must be maintained. In some cases, they have to be upgraded. So which is why you have to ensure that not only are the infrastructure there, but they're generating economic activities. It's important to ensure that that's one of the second thing is also understanding that the role of what we're responsible for is also part of how you drive economic growth in society, because technology helps to raise the level of productivity across key sectors, whether you're talking about agriculture, education, health, and other sectors. And in doing that partnership, what the government has been prioritizing is saying, whilst we're going to invest, we won't necessarily be the one running this infrastructure, because we want the private sector to be part of it. So number one, in all of our investment, government is only investing up to 49%. We're actually bringing the private sector. So even the investment from the World Bank, which is towards the 49% for government, is not the entire thing. So we have private companies who are also coming into this project with us. They're co-owning the infrastructure with us. They're going to be the ones to ensure that we can make some sort of returns of the infrastructure so that we can pay the loan back, and they can also make money, but also ensure that it's sustainable and we can continue to maintain it as well. And that's the future we've seen. Nigeria's telecommunication sector is the largest on the African continent. If you look at it by capitalization, but also by foreign direct investments as well, it's the largest. We've received a lot of funding to companies in Nigeria in that sector. So we understand that the growth that we want to see cannot happen just by government dumping money into the sector. Government's role is to plug the gap. Where private capital will not go, government will invest in it, but we have to work with the private sector to ensure that the sector stays sustainable.
As we look to even take lessons from Nigeria, what strategy is there for us to carry this across the hard-to-reach areas?
So the way we see non-consumption is actually not based on affordability. I think affordability is what the private sector will do. As government, we need to all establish that connectivity is nearly a right, that every of our people should have access. But if you then take it beyond humans, smart government will tell you that it's nearly impossible to secure a society that is not connected, because connectivity is part of our security operatives that actually manage what is going on in any country. Smart government will tell you that you can become a great mining nation if you don't have connectivity, because most of the best mines in the world today are connected to 5G. They use equipment that uses connectivity to be able to do the work they want to do. Agriculture, for instance. Smart nations will tell you, you can't continue to do agriculture the same way we've been doing it for years. You need to introduce smart technologies to make it a lot more precise. You can't do precision agriculture without connectivity. So for us, when we look at non-consumption, we say, where are the spaces where connectivity can drive growth? But at the minute, we're not seeing people consuming connectivity in those locations. And we know that some of the reasons will be infrastructure. Perhaps they don't have access. Second will be cost. Third, maybe the fact that they actually don't know what to do with it and how to use it. So a good example is schools. Schools currently don't have huge budgets to pay for internet, but we know the value that internet can bring to them. Hospitals, for instance, we know the value of connectivity in spaces like this. So part of what we're looking at is, what will be the business model? How do we ensure that the price is decent enough for them to be able to afford it so that it can drive the growth? Which is why in the university that we went, instead of just giving free internet, government is de-risking, investing in the infrastructure, making it cheaper for the ISP to provide connectivity services at a rate that nearly all students can afford. So that's the way we're looking at consumption.
When we talk about the future of work and the skills of the future, there's a heavy reliance on the fact that young people should have some technology survey skills. The foundation can only be laid by education, and digital infrastructure still plays a part in that. What do you hope to have achieved, say, because you give a year of 2027, what do you hope to have achieved in preparing young people for the future of digital work by that time?
That one is understanding that today, nearly everyone should be digitally literate because technology has changed the shape of education. What you learn in classroom today is actually quite limited because there's enough access to knowledge out there, and your ability to access the knowledge but also appropriate it is what determines how well you're learning. And for you to be able to do that, you need to be digitally literate. And that's what we're responsible for. So again, we have in our targets to ensure that by 2027, 70% of Nigerians are actually digitally literate. I think we're somewhere under 30% at the minute. So we're aggressively launching programs where wherever you are in the country, whether it's on your phone, you can go online, you can actually learn basics about how to behave online, how to find information, how to create your email account, online banking, those basic things that will prepare you to be able to navigate your way digitally. We think that's extremely important. The second thing which we've started, was one of the programs we started, is also recognizing that we're an extremely youthful nation. And we think Nigeria should and can become a major source of talent for global workforce in technology. Because when you look at so many countries in the world, they're experiencing a decline in their population and also aging as well. But Nigeria and most African countries were on the rise. So we've prioritized digital skills, where we're now training 3 million technical talents. The idea is that this 3 million technical talents, if we're able to achieve it again by 2027, that a significant portion of them can help us drive the growth that we want to see in our local digital ecosystem. But that's a significant portion can also then work remotely, but also maybe leave the country and work for companies within the technology space abroad. It's something to establish that there's a massive gap in talent workforce globally, not enough people to work in that space. And Nigeria would like to become a net exporter of technology talent.
What are some of the lessons or the learnings you've observed from Nigeria as the one mandated to do the implementation that the rest of Africa can pick on from?
It's probably the ambition. I think there's a lot of confusion in how we should be thinking of digital infrastructure. And for me, one thing I pray we can mainstream on the continent, because we're now a single market, and the future that I see for the African continent is one where the nation is actually wired with cables. With fiber optic cables. Because I think for the amount of young people we have, if we expose them to meaningful connectivity, which means, barest minimum, your download speed is about 25 Mbps, barest minimum. I think if we can expose them to that level of connectivity, the creativity on the continent is gonna skyrocket. And that creativity is what's gonna help us build a stronger economy. It's where opportunities and jobs will come for our young people. It's where we're going to see solutions to a lot of the age-long challenges that we faced as a people, and I think it's a priority. So if there's anything I wish people will learn, it's that African countries should actually stop the narrative that it's mobile first. I think that narrative was useful up to a point. Now for us to move forward, we need to start to think of deeper digital infrastructure. And also the second part of that will be access as well. How do we work together to ensure that devices are now affordable for our people? Because even if you have the connectivity, people can buy a good quality smartphone or a tablet or a laptop. We're still going to limit how many people can gain access to it. So we also need to pull together, leverage our strengths to ensure that these devices, that they become extremely affordable. And also there are financing options for our people to gain access to them too.
What is your message to the entrepreneurs developing solutions for education?
It's a tough space because I've supported entrepreneurs in that space. It's one thing to have a really good idea. It's another thing to get it in the hands of the people. It's another thing to monetize it. And this is why for us, I believe that one of the things that we can contribute is ensuring that the access in itself becomes extremely ubiquitous. It becomes affordable, but also good quality as well, that people can use it at home, at school, and whilst they move. That's the foundation. The second thing is also then ensuring that we can create a platform for collaboration with the startups, which is why I think Nigeria, considering developing its own EdTech strategy, is actually something that we have to get done as soon as possible. Because if government can come together with the private sector, but also the development sector, I think we can craft a way to say, how do we accelerate quickly the ecosystem and platforms that these entrepreneurs needs to be able to get their product in the hands of the people that they're building for. And we know that if we can do that, we'll only end up improving the learning outcomes across the continent, which will get us closer to where we need to be as a people.
And now we would like to connect to our panel of experts who are going to be talking to us pretty much about what is missing, what could work better, and what is working at the moment. Engineer Babagana Digima, who is the head of New Media and Information Security at the Nigerian Communications Commission. Nisi Madu, who is the Managing Director, Co-Creation Hub in Nigeria. And we also have Abdullahi Bature, who is the co-founder and CEO of Schooler, which is an EdTech company. And he's actually one of the 2023 EdTech Fellows of the Mastercard Foundation EdTech Fellowship Program. Thank you all for joining us on this conversation. I guess the first question to ask is your reactions to the Honorable Minister's remarks and what exactly he was saying about the strategy. I'll start with you, Engineer Digima.
The strategies outlined by the Honorable Minister quite ambitious in some cases, and in some cases there are things that we feel can work from the NCC point of view. He mentioned some things that we feel, I think we're putting in place now, particularly about redesigning the spaces that we have created or we have provided as interventions in the past. I think it's something, yes, that is welcome. In the past, we have had projects where you go to a school. For instance, I've seen a project where a school is given a set of computers, but they had to reject it because the reason is that they only have 2 classrooms, right, that is secured. And if you bring those computers and dump them there or keep them there, the students will not have time for their regular schooling. So it's kind of something that they don't need that distraction. So they rejected those. So I think, like the Honorable Minister pointed out, we need to really redesign the spaces, think more, and then add also to sustainability plans.
I think I'll piggyback off of what Engineer Dikima said. We've seen a number of projects with computer labs in schools. And one of the things that really struck me about the Honorable Minister's interview was talking about being intentional with the design of providing this digital infrastructure in schools. How do you make sure that this infrastructure works for the schools instead of just ticking the box on providing this infrastructure? So everything from if there are a number of students in the schools and the number of devices that we provide, or in the way and manner in which we provide these devices, how do we make sure that it aligns to what it is that they need, how they need it, including also layering resources or services, as we call them, contents that will be beneficial for them. And I think that that's very important. The second one is around affordability of even the connectivity in and of itself when it's provided in the institutions. I think that this also ties to being very intentional about understanding this target audience, understanding their needs, understanding what's affordable for them, and designing, affordable packages that they can pay for to make sure that the connectivity that we are looking for, or that they're able to access this connectivity at the end of the day.
Well, for me, I really love the bit around consumption centers. Again, I was really discussing with Nisi, and it made me actually understand the minister's plans. I felt also it was very ambitious, but if we're able to identify these consumption centers and able to have good partnerships after the government has de-risked the investment, then it helps me and other founders to bring services that will help in creating that new business model that helps, make that consumption center actually consumable so that others can actually benefit from it.
What's working in Nigeria and what can work better, or what's not working and needs to work better?
We've seen a number of projects. I don't think we are lacking for projects focused on providing digital infrastructure in schools. There are a number of them, which is a good thing in and of itself. But what we can do better is making sure that we're thinking a lot farther about what this infrastructure will do and how to really unlock the value for this infrastructure in schools. And so this includes in terms of the design of the space, in terms of how we think about the devices and the use of these devices, in terms of how we provide support mechanisms to ensure sustainability and maintenance of that, in terms of how we think about the content and services layered on top of that, in terms of how we think about the support, digital literacy skills and support to the teachers, the learners in the schools that we provide this infrastructure to be able to effectively use this infrastructure that we've provided. So on one hand, what's working is that these projects are great to have, but we need to just make sure that there's intentionality in the design and really have a laser focus on unlocking value that these devices or this infrastructure can provide.
There are commendable efforts being made, but I'm more concerned about basic education, which is where I play in. And I love to see more efforts, more drive towards making sure that infrastructure, goes to, the most remote location where little children, are able to leverage technology to support learning. Now, you have teachers that are not up to par, and we felt technology could help that. But then if there's no infrastructure there, it's going to be a big challenge. Now, most of us must have gone to primary or secondary school in our remote locations, but then to tertiary, we're able to move to get that. But then again, what we can do more is to actually look at these areas and see how we can support.
If we look at it from the bigger perspective of providing the infrastructure that supports everything, that's as a commission or as the NCC, we can see that, yes, we have had increase in broadband penetration. We had services like submarine cables being available and stuff like that. So we feel these are working. Our interactions maybe with government agencies or state governments to bring down the cost of right-of-way, cost of access, these are things that are working to help take the infrastructure to the educational institutions and so on. And we feel also some of our policies as well, though they may not be directly related to infrastructure provision, but there are things that will stimulate infrastructure. For example, the Commission has helped to bring about the case of the USSD debt to resolve that. And we feel that will stimulate the service providers to bring in more infrastructure, lay more fiber, bring in more base stations. Similarly, the issue of interconnect debt, we're working on that as well. And so those are little things that we feel they are working to stimulate infrastructure provision.
And that brings me to you, Abdullahi, because as one of the EdTech innovators in Nigeria, I'm sure there's a reason why you're continuously innovating. But what strategies do you think can be employed to make sure that all students, or in this case, all learners, have the necessary devices for learning? Because it can't be one-sided, that you're only churning out the software. What happens to the devices on which the content is meant to sit?
I want to see more innovators building around, device pay small, parents pay, gradually. And I'd love to see the telcos actually making connectivity cheaper, especially for education. Zero rating data. I know a host of the companies are doing that. But again, I'll borrow from Nisi and say we have to be really, really intentional about it. Innovators like myself don't have to keep writing to apply for those. But then if you hit a certain number of users, you are able to access this. It motivates people like me to want to reach that so that the prices for my offering goes down. And, companies that will come together to make sure the prices for devices go down, I think is one of the strategies that I'm personally thinking about.
Okay. Nisi, the issue of connectivity doesn't just serve the learners or the innovators. It also plays a huge role in the work that you're doing as tech hubs. How would you put it if, say, you were to look through a solution for the what could work better? How would you put it from a tech hub's perspective?
It's very important that connectivity is available, especially for a number of the innovative programs or the innovators that we support. The reality essentially is that the more we think about solutions to challenges or solutions that can take advantage of opportunities to provide more services that can help improve learning outcomes for learners or young people across the country, we constantly think about connectivity and the importance of that and designing solutions that play to it, whether the availability or lack thereof of that. And so essentially for us is, because we take an ecosystem approach to this work, we're not just thinking about working with the innovators alone, it's also thinking about engaging with stakeholders who are critical for ensuring that this connectivity is available and that the innovations that we support our entrepreneurs to build are able to see effective adoption for it. And so it's various elements like speaking to telcos or, internet service providers, or even working with government as well to be able to ensure that we're thinking critically about how do we make sure that this connectivity is extended? How do we think about affordability as well in these areas? And basically thinking of a market-based approach to all of this that brings all of the key stakeholders together and making sure that what comes out at the end of the day sees learners everywhere, whether they're in urban areas or rural areas, be able to access these critical resources that can empower them and help them to create a better quality of life for themselves and, for their community.
Engineer Digima, I know you're leaning towards adding something to what Nisi is saying, but I also wanted to add to that, the role of public-private partnerships in making sure that at least we are seeing a scale in digital educational infrastructure. Because what's happening now is, for example, we have electricity connectivity. And many African countries are having this last mile connectivity strategy and plan to make sure that at least every part of Africa is connected to electricity. Can we be intentional about having the same thing done for internet connectivity? And what is the role of public-private partnerships?
I think that's the direction that the Honorable Minister is going. If you look at all the conversations that he has had before, it's all pointing out towards public-private partnerships, whether it's the N-band or it's the 7,000 BTSs now and towers, or other projects. And similarly for the NCC as well, even our previous projects, even though they are not in that same framework, but it's also, in most cases, it's either build, operate, and transfer, or build, operate, and own, and things like that. So we had a number of projects like that which are very successful. And I think going forward, we are in a good direction because the Honorable Minister has shown that every time we want to design a project, it has to be with that concept in mind that, yes, you are not going to be the ones to run it as a government, but you need partners. And this is what has been going on with the N-band. It's also what's been going on with the 7,000 BTSs and towers. It's also going to be the same thing for the 90,000 kilometers.
Abdullahi, how are innovators like yourselves addressing the cost barrier? Because based on what Engineer Digima said about affordability, at the end of it all, it's a business. But how are you as EdTech innovators addressing this cost issue?
We are building our solution, Corey AI. It uses, new emerging technology, Gen AI, but we don't have a mobile app. And every day the teachers will tell us, Is it on the Play Store? So we left it on the web, so it works on any device. You just go to a web browser that you already have. We're also thinking around making sure it works offline first, not continuously dependent on internet connection. You are able to generate, because with AI you need internet, so you are able to generate, but then you can be able to come back, to it as well. But then again, to support learners and even teachers, especially those in super low resource communities, they need, devices, which again goes back to what I cannot be able to do. But then innovators, have an opportunity now to provide those. And the skill also. You'd finish doing this, but if they don't get to engage with it, we are also continuously innovating around supporting teachers, especially again in those super low resource communities, by supporting them to do sort of to spark their interest first.
Let me see, what other measures can be taken to expand access to digital infrastructure in order for us all to thrive, from not just the learners, but we're looking at the innovators. What other measures need to be put in place for us to make sure that there are opportunities, not just across Nigeria, but across Africa as well?
We need to have a very solid focus on ensuring that we're thinking about providing, access to devices and connectivity from a market-based approach. Right. And so what that would require us to do is bringing various stakeholders to co-design business models with all of these elements that is affordable and sustainable. And we've seen that in our work, basically this ecosystem enabler work, bringing all of these key stakeholders together. And it's questions like, if we have local companies assembling, fit for purpose, education devices on the continent, is that going to make it, more affordable? We think that it might, but there needs to be work to do that, to start to think about what would it take. I've had conversations where I've spoken to a number of, startups and the devices play, and they say, well, if we do this, can we get a guarantee of perhaps 100,000 devices on order, and things like that? That starts to make it very interesting for us. I've had conversations where we're talking about, affordable internet packages for education specifically. And the question is, we have to design that really well to say, if it's a learner, maybe age 3, age 4, age 5, or in basic education, what sort of solutions would they need? How do we make sure that it's those essential solutions that are provided within that package and their parents can pay for, instead of a slew of, resources that perhaps is not aligned to what that particular learner needs and might increase the cost of this? How do we bring the innovators and all of the stakeholders to the table to say, well, if you want us to provide affordable internet packages, to what I was saying before about lightweight solutions, then you have to start thinking about, how to make sure your solutions are lightweight, and so that all of these things can fit together. So we need to look at that entire value chain of when we provide this infrastructure and making sure that it's available, how do we make sure that we actually extract value from that and provide all of the other layers that would see the kind of value that we believe that, at the very foundational level, infrastructure can unlock.
Abdullahi, how does low digital infrastructure coverage affect the extension of solutions like yours? Or how does the lack of it affect your business solution?
When we talk about infrastructure, we talk about power, a big problem for us here, internet connectivity, because even if there's internet, then there's no power, big problem, and they are unable to use my solution. And then devices, which are not available, especially where there's going to be the most value, derived from, say, leveraging a tool like Courier. And then the skills gap. So if we are able to get that, it will help me innovate more, build the support system within the application, increase even the number of hours they put into doing that. And I think I'll be the most important person, because teachers will support kids at a very, very early stage, and they're able to be angry enough to start building these infrastructures locally. So teachers, the role, like the Honorable Minister said, information is ubiquitous. Information is there. The teacher is no longer the master. There's a master called ChatGPT that knows more than the teacher, more organized, more structured. But I am the biggest supporter of teachers, and I tell them their job is to inspire. If you come to the front of the class and you say, one minister, one governor, and one president is going to come out of this class, it's possible. But don't forget me. When you become a minister, you want to bring me on board. And they may laugh about it, but then that's the kind of transformation I think I'll be able to do if all these, boxes are checked.
As we bring this conversation to a close, if there was one thing that you would fix to make sure that you've laid the proper foundation for education technology to thrive in Nigeria and across Africa, what would it be?
You keep talking to the stakeholders. You co-design a fantastic policy that is clear, that if you are able to achieve this, you get this. You understand this is how you grow. If I want to get to the numbers, these are the things that are outlined, and the government, as the player, says there's that guarantee.
What I would fix is that collaboration amongst all of the different stakeholders and doing it a lot better. At the Mastercard Foundation EdTech conference last year, the Honorable Minister mentioned about the Universal Service Provision Fund, and that this fund was available in a lot of different countries. And that sparked a lot of thinking, not just for us as an ecosystem enabler, but for a lot of innovators as well, to say, how do we also enlighten ourselves on policies or initiatives that exist by the government, and so that we can come to the table, talking about how all of these policies can be better implemented or these things can be leveraged. And so that's what I'll fix. That well-oiled, machine between all of these critical stakeholders to be able to unlock the value that we know that technology can unlock in education for the continent.
For me, I would say for government policies, I always say about policy, but then basically it's for policies to have clear-cut directions for agencies under the ministries or parastatals to create something to implement part of the policies that they can be held accountable to. So, and this is what the Honorable Minister is doing now. So everything, you need to give timelines, you need to give things that you can account for at the end of that timeline to say, yes, this is what the policy directed and this is what we have done to achieve that. So I think that's what we need to fix. Policies should just have clear-cut directions for agencies to implement.
And so looking at the solutions that you've provided, I believe that this is pretty much setting us on the right trail for us to get to having a more organized, more regulated EdTech ecosystem, but one that also is looking to find solutions to the challenges that we have, like the foundational infrastructure that supports EdTech solutions. So thank you all so much for joining us. As the most populous nation across the African continent, Nigeria's investment in digital infrastructure is set to be a game changer. And with what we can see for now is that there cannot be digital infrastructure without the other supporting strategies. So for education technology to thrive in Nigeria and anywhere across the country, indeed, we have observed from the conversations that we've had that there's got to be a nexus in the innovation side, the digital infrastructure side, but also in the connectivity side for everything to thrive accordingly or successfully. Thank you all for joining us on this edition of EdTech Mondays Africa. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Until the next edition, it's bye-bye for now from Nigeria's capital, Abuja.
EdTech Mondays Africa is supported by the Mastercard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning and is part of the Young Africa Works programming.